he's gonna pressure you. He's gonna push you to your limits. We saw him do that to Errol Spence, and so now we want to see just what Terence Crawford is really made of when he's up against a genuine top five fighter within the weight class, basically. And so that's why it's like an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. What happens, man? You see what I'm saying? That's it. It's fireworks.
That's how it is. It's fireworks. The way, what you know, my. Hi there, guys, and welcome to A Dash of Sports, episode 55. I'll be your host and presenter, Dashiki Dash, and on this show is where I talk about all things sports related, hot topics, and trending stories. And if you like the previous episodes, then hey, give us a like, comment, subscribe, and remember to press the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my shows. And one last thing, sharing is caring, so don't forget to share this. And on today's show, I'm bringing you another boxing special with my returning guest, Talk to Budge. Budge is going to be helping me preview the epic fight this Saturday, the 20th of November, between Terrence Crawford and Shawn Porter. Another epic fight to round off the year. So we're not only just going to be previewing the fight, we're also going to be giving our fight predictions. Who's going to win, Terrence Crawford or Shawn Porter? So without further ado, let's jump straight into the show. Yep. We're back live in the cut again with my boy Budge up in the building. What you saying, my bro?
We're back, man. We're back, and we said it. We had to do this more frequently because the fight schedule for the rest of this year is too mad not to. There's too many big, exciting fights for us not to link up, chop it up, and discuss and break down these fights, man.
100%. And obviously where we left off, if you guys didn't watch the previous show, we pretty much broke down the Canelo versus Plant fight, the undisputed fight, and what it meant in terms of the world of boxing, and pretty much what's next, which has now brought us to what we're talking about now. That is Terrence Crawford versus Shawn Porter. But before I start, just obviously quickly introduce my guests here. You introduce yourself, man. You already know, man.
100%, man. Eventually, I'm going to get to a point where I don't even need to introduce myself because you guys are going to see me often enough on the platform where you know who it is already, man. But for those of you who don't know, I'm Budge. Me and Dash, man, our paths were always going to collide because we literally are people of the same mind, man. We're both big Arsenal fans. We're both big boxing fans. And so whenever it comes to a time where we want to chop it up about something, we're like, let's jump on a pod and let's have a conversation, man, because 100%. we both think in a very similar way, man. So yeah, man, it's always a pleasure for me to come on the platform. For those of you who haven't seen any of like the content that I've put out, basically you can check me out on Twitter, on Instagram, and on YouTube. It's Talk to Budge, TALK, the number 2 BUJ, and you can just see like all of my posts, man, all of my videos and stuff, talking about boxing, talking about Arsenal, talking about football. So if you're into that kind of thing, well, I'm sure you are because you're following Dash and you're listening to Dash's content, and like I said, we're birds of the same feather, man. So hit me up as well and help us to continue to grow and develop our platforms, man.
Appreciate it, Bush. Like you said, man, go and check him out on all these platforms. The link will be in the description. And yeah, pretty much, man, we're going to be seeing more Bush on here in A Dash of Sports, chopping it up. So it'll come to the point where he doesn't even need to introduce himself. You just know right away, Bush is in the building and we're going to get this cracking. Without further ado, man, let's jump straight into it. Terrence Crawford versus Shawn Porter. Talk to me, my guy. What are you saying?
Boy, so I think this fight is a huge fight because of where both of these guys are in their careers at this point in time. On the side of Shawn Porter, who's obviously the challenger in this fight, he is coming into this fight, and someone would look at the records of both of these guys and think, oh, it's just going to be a blowout. It's definitely going to be a Terrence Crawford win, because they'll look at the 3 losses that Shawn Porter has on his record and think he's nothing special. The problem is, though, when you look at it under a microscope, is that Shawn Porter is never in a boring fight. He's always in an exciting fight that has the fans on the edge of their seats. And if you watch the fights that he lost, they are always so closely contested, whereby some people even have him winning those fights. They're very, very close. He doesn't get dog walked. He doesn't get stopped. He doesn't get blown out of the water. It's always like a round or two that separates him from the victor. And he was in a fight. His most recent championship fight was a unification against Errol Spence, right? Which was a fight of the year contender when they did fight. And that fight was so nip and tuck. It was really only in the championship rounds that Errol Spence created some distance. He got a bit of he got a knockdown in the 11th round and then won the 12th convincingly. Well, I say convincingly,
he won the 12,
he won the 12th round, right? Which is what basically edged it in his favor. But a lot of people thought prior to that fight that Errol Spence was just going to come in and stop Porter, and that wasn't the case.
It wasn't the case.
He really gave him a run for his money. And so why this fight is so significant for Shawn Porter is that this really is his last bite at the apple, right?
Redemption, last chance saloon, all of that.
Exactly. Like if you know that this is his last chance at this level. Of course, as well, he's 33 years of age now. So he's looking at it like, look, this is my last chance at a world title. And he's been speaking recently because he's started to do a lot of stuff around like punditry and analysis, and he's got his own podcast as well, the Porter Way podcast that I like to listen to. He's speaking a lot more recently about legacy and the fact that he feels that despite he's got a fairly stellar resume, if we're talking just forgetting wins, losses, and draws, just the names on his resume, he's fought everyone.
Yep.
He has away from fights. He's not shied away from any kind of fights. He's fought absolutely everyone. But he feels that he hasn't done enough yet in terms of notable and significant wins to guarantee and rubber stamp his place in the Hall of Fame. So this fight for him isn't a payday. It's not a fight where he just wants to rock up and just for the sake of it, For the sake of it, he wants to win this fight and truly believes he's going to win this fight because he knows it's important for his legacy, right? And so he's hungry. He is so desperate to win this fight, which is why it's very, very interesting for him. On the flip side, you've got Terence Crawford, who, despite all he's achieved and all his successes at the various weight classes that he's campaigned at, being a champion at 135 pounds, being undisputed at 140 pounds, and now being a champion at 147 pounds, his resume is always called into question. And there are still so many people feel that he hasn't fought against the top opposition in the welterweight division to be considered a genuine threat at the weight. So he is basically trying to prove himself against Shawn Porter, who a lot of people feel will be his toughest test in his career to date, because we know what Shawn Porter brings to the table. He's a dog in that ring. He's coming forward. He's going to pressure you every second of every minute of every single round. This guy is taking a back step, right?
That's what he does.
He's so well conditioned. He's so fit that he's going to pressure you. He's going to push you to your limits. We saw him do that to Errol Spence. And so now we want to see just what Terence Crawford is really made of when he's up against a genuine top 5 fighter within the weight class, basically. And so that's why it's like an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. What happens, man? You see what I'm saying? That's it. It's fireworks.
That's how it is. It's fireworks. The what you know, my I want to say my concern or my fear for Shawn Porter in terms of career wise. You've just alluded to him being pretty much, you can count on him to be a great within boxing. I just feel like off the back of the 3 losses, my fear for him was that he doesn't now become one of those gatekeepers, you know, that that in order for you to kind of boost your credentials, if you fight someone like Shawn Porter, it like he's a leveled fighter, don't get me wrong, but I don't want it to be a case, and this is, and like you said, this is pretty much his last chance saloon to not put himself in that box, because it could come to the point if he loses this fight and he wants to carry on, it's pretty much the fighters after that. If they fight Shawn Porter and you do well, it gives you a leg up, and then you continue on, and Shawn Porter stays there. And like you said, he's into his punditry now, commentating podcasts and stuff like that. So almost kind of a Paulie Malignaggi kind of situation where eventually Paulie had to just be like, you know what, man, I can't continue going into the ring. That's what I fear, but I feel like he will give Terence Crawford a really good fight. Would you say this would be kind of a marginal kind of barometer or measuring stick between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford? Whoever kind of does well against or shows how well they've done against Shawn Porter, do you then kind of see where the alignment would be in terms of who would win between Terence Crawford and Errol Spence? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, this is the thing. Of course, in boxing, it's difficult to have those triangle theories, like this person beat him, so that means automatically this person beats that person, so on and so forth, right? But I would be lying if I said that my immediate thought after seeing Shawn Porter versus Errol Spence, my immediate thought after that fight was, I want to see Terence Crawford versus Shawn Porter now, basically. So I could start to measure the two of them, right?
We're just measuring, yeah. Like you said, it's very hard because styles makes fights.
Styles make fights.
This ain't the playgrounds because you bust someone up in the playground. All of a sudden, you can bust the other person up. But yeah, like you said, yeah, just to kind of measure and see, because it's long awaited, isn't it? Yeah.
Especially because of the fact that Shawn Porter makes every opponent look bad, right? No one has a field day against Shawn Porter. No one looks their best against Shawn Porter.
Nobody looks clean.
So and especially Spence was a perfect case in point. He didn't look his best in that fight. He had to really bite down on his gum shield and dig deep, man, because Shawn Porter was bringing it. He was bringing the heat, and we've not seen Terence Crawford have to do that. So we want to see him face some sort of adversity. We want to see him face someone where, he's going to be pushed to his limit. So that's why the style in which Crawford wins, should he win, is important. That's why he spoke about wanting to go out and stop Shawn Porter, to one up Errol Spence, to do one better than him.
This is what I'm saying.
Do what no one was able to do. And whilst I hear it and I get it, I just find it very, very difficult to see that happen, because Shawn Porter is just not that guy.
He's an animal, bro.
He's not that guy that you're just gonna have your way with, man. He's really gonna push you,
So we spoke about Shawn Porter's last fight. What about Terence Crawford's last fight? Because he looked really good in that fight against, was it Victor Postol? Was it Victor Postol?
No, you know what? His last fight actually was Kell Brook.
Oh yeah. Oh,
his last fight was Kell Brook. And you know what? Really. You know what was really interesting about that, right? I listened to the Porterway podcast straight afterwards, and Shawn Porter was talking about his disappointment, right?
In that fight.
Because he in the fight between Terence Crawford and Kell Brook. He was like, look, Kell Brook, right, a championship level fighter. He should be a championship level fighter. He was basically saying he felt that he didn't offer the right level of resistance to
Yes, I remember he was very disappointed immediately after the fight. Yeah,
he was disappointed. He was like, he didn't do enough. He didn't show the resistance, that warrior heart, that spirit. It's like,
the same spirit that he did in his fight as well together.
Exactly. And that's another reason why I feel that Shawn Porter is going to give Terence Crawford a run for his money, because he understands. He was disappointed with that. So he's not going to come in and offer the same thing. He's like, nah, that's not the way that you fight. You know what I mean? You go in with a warrior spirit, and you go, with the mentality that I might get hurt, but I'm going to hurt this guy as well. You see what I'm saying? He's going to offer. I feel like he's going to offer that resistance that he was looking for Kell Brook to offer when he fought against Terence Crawford.
I forgot about that fight. That's how much it really. I remember that fight, and I was so disappointed in Kell Brook, because I felt like he almost came into the fight like he was a last minute replacement, almost like the way he carried himself. Even in defeat, he just looked out of it, already questioning himself. So it looked like a fighter that was at the end of his tether in regards to his career. So I wasn't surprised in the type of performance that he put in, and the critique, or the criticism, should I say, that he received in that fight. So for me, in terms of Terence Crawford, it didn't really give him the competition that he needed, and hence how you're seeing what Shawn Porter was saying in regards to not really seeing anything impressive for Terence Crawford, and maybe a few holes in Terence Crawford as well. Like, in terms of the excitement and the build up for the fight, how have you been finding it?
Man, I've liked it, man. I've liked the needle, but not, I wouldn't say needle, but like both of these guys have a respect for each other, right? So it's never gonna be like hostile and whatnot towards each other, but there is mutual respect. But it's like, yeah, you know, and I know, like we're both going into this fight, and it's like, like we're trying to one up each other. You know, there is that competitive edge, and I think like hearing that, like the backstory, because these guys grew up in their amateurs together and whatnot, man. Like Kenny Porter, who's Shawn Porter's dad, trained Terence Crawford on the US national team, and stuff like that. So they've got that backstory, which helps. And also I find interesting as well, Showtime has got the All Access thing. Top Rank have got this Blood, Sweat and Tears style documentary that they're doing as well, to kind of in a similar way to the All Access, which again always helps like build the fight, man, because you're seeing what these guys are doing in camp. You're hearing about their backstories, you're hearing from their families and so on and so forth too, man. So I think the build up has been interesting. Obviously, fight week is so much different, like, because it's not quite yet fight week. We're seeing it build and simmer. But when it's fight week is when it's gonna all spill over. You see what I'm saying? That's when there's no friendship. That's when there's not. It's just.
You're very right, man. And obviously, we alluded this when we spoke about the Tyson Fury fight, and I think we touched on Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis. These guys are usually friends beforehand, even pretty much more than friends, because they're going into each other's houses, they're eating dinner, mums is making munch, and like you said, obviously Terence Crawford was trained by Shawn Porter's dad and stuff like that. So the relationships do run deep. I don't feel like particular these two guys have that kind of animosity towards each other, but that competitive edge, when to yourself, your levels and I'm levels, what I mean? It's like they'll be talking smack. They'll be talking that, you can't do this to me. I'm a more skilled boxer than you. So yeah, I pretty much agree. When it comes to fight week, it's gonna really simmer on. What is in terms of the approach for each fighter? Let's just start with Terence Crawford. How do you think he's gonna go into this fight? What I think the better question is, what do you think he needs to do to beat Shawn Porter?
I think he has to expect and anticipate that he's going to have to work non-stop throughout every single round, and there's not going to be periods where he can take a break or try and find pockets where he can recover and whatnot. He has to be well conditioned physically and mentally to prepare for the oncoming of Shawn Porter, and be prepared that regardless of whatever you throw at this guy, he's going to keep coming. Because the thing is, sometimes fighters can get a bit disheartened when they're throwing shots at a guy and he's just not going anywhere. You see what I'm saying? So be prepared for that. Be prepared that this fight might go, it's going to go the distance, and you're going to have to work at a pace that you're not comfortable with usually, right? And I think what is really important for Crawford is that he needs to really utilize his ambidexterity and the fact that he's a switch hitter. He needs to be able to change and give Shawn Porter different looks so that Shawn Porter doesn't ever really settle. He always needs to keep him guessing. I think that's one thing. And the other thing I think is really important is his timing. He knows that Shawn Porter is going to be aggressive and he's going to come in, and at times he might be a bit careless. So he needs to time him well on when he's coming in to catch him with good shots, move, pivot, and so on and so forth, basically.
And power. I think a lot of people kind of underestimate Terence Crawford's power as well. Do you think the power will be an issue for Shawn Porter, or do you reckon he'll be able to, as we say, if sometimes you respect someone's power, do you reckon he will be worried about Terence Crawford's power?
No, because I don't think Crawford hits harder than Spence, and he took Spence's best shot, so I don't think he's going to be worried about power per se coming into it. I think it's more about the skill of Crawford, his timing, his movement, and the fact that he can give him different looks, which will be more tricky to try and circumnavigate and deal with, basically. And maybe Porter gets frustrated because he's coming forward and he's trying to hit a guy who isn't there to be hit. Maybe he's moving so quickly and whatnot, so it's like Porter starts to get frustrated and he can't, he can't do any, he can't close the distance or whatever.
So you've just touched a little bit on what Shawn Porter needs to do as well. Just to elaborate a little bit further, like obviously he needs to press, he needs to be on the front foot, you would say, majority of the time. Still obviously give that dogged work that's needed. What else do you reckon he needs to do in order to beat Crawford? Because you remember, like you said, last chance saloon, man. He's got to give it his all.
Yeah, I think he has to start early. A lot of the time, people, boxers will start tentatively and have like a few rounds where you're feeling out the other person and you're just trying to establish things and establish a rhythm. Basically, doing that works in favor of Terence Crawford.
Allows him to settle.
Allowing him to settle, allowing him to get into a rhythm and a routine works against you. What you need to do, if you're Shawn Porter, is you need to unsettle him early on. You need to make sure he's uncomfortable. You need to get at him straight away. Don't give him a chance to settle. Don't hold off. Don't be tentative. Just hit him straight away. And you might need to play the dark arts game a little bit, man. You see what I'm saying? You might need to rough him up a little bit, make him uncomfortable. It might be that you lean on him a little bit, you push him around a little bit, you annoy him, because again, that contributes to not allowing him to find his rhythm. If he's frustrated, if he's annoyed, if he's always asking a ref to intervene and whatnot, then you're getting him out of his psyche.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? And I think in this fight, the mental aspect of this fight is really important. Who has an edge mentally is really, really, really important. And I think for Shawn Porter, it's about unsettling Crawford and making him fight the fight that you want. You want it to be rough and rugged and fought on the inside the whole fight. You don't want a man to be fighting on the back foot and
clean and dance, making it look good for the judges and making it pretty for the judges.
That's not what you want.
So just to kind of lastly touch on, we know what this means for Shawn Porter. Last chance saloon, pretty much got to give it his all. What about Terence Crawford? And obviously, if he was to, what does this mean for Terence Crawford? Win, lose, or draw?
I think the win definitely gives him respect because he's beaten a top level welterweight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I what I think does more for him is the fact that after this fight he's a free agent.
Okay, so he's moving on from who's he with?
From top rank.
Top rank, yeah.
I think that does more for him. I think the fact that he is a free agent after that, so him winning this fight, getting a solid name at welterweight on his resume, and the fact that he then becomes free to do as he pleases, does more for him because then he could, I think, making the fights with the other top welterweights becomes easier if he goes over to like the PBC side of things and whatnot.
Okay, so in terms of losing now, where do you think that it puts him? Like, obviously, it's quite obvious in terms of the advantage that you get from beating Shawn Porter, but I think more or less what I'm trying to get at, if he loses against Shawn Porter, does it put him in a position to be able to get that Errol Spence Jr. fight?
Nah. I think if he loses, everyone's going to question his entire resume, man. He can't lose this fight because basically what it will just be is everyone will just be like, oh, it's exactly what we thought. You know, he hasn't fought any top opposition. When he finally did fight a top opposition, he lost. So he was never that guy. He was never that guy. He was always a good fighter, but he's never that guy.
So ultimately, Shawn Porter is the gatekeeper. If you think about it now, when you break it down like that, low key he is, because it's like literally if you beat Shawn Porter, you pretty much put yourself in that steed of fighters that are now capable to move on to that level. And then obviously for Shawn Porter, it allows him to then just to pick up from where he left off and try and rebuild his career. But I just feel like Shawn Porter is just one fight away. If he loses just any fight between now and his next or whatever, that's pretty much it for him. But for Terence Crawford, yeah, you're right. I believe if he doesn't win this fight, it really puts a doubt in the minds of people whether or not he can go on to Errol Spence, which is the fight that I want to see, man. I really want to see that fight because both fighters, there's a needle. And you know what I always say about this? I like when fighters have got that needle between them, like so that when you get into the ring, I know it's genuine. I don't want it to be a case, you know, like not to veer off from what we're talking about, but just like Errol Spence versus Pacquiao. Like, I didn't want to see that fight, man. Genuinely, like obviously both fighters with their skill sets is really good, but it's not a fight that you know that is between them. They really have that needle between them. I don't know if you feel the same in terms of what I'm saying there.
Yeah, I do get what you mean, though. I do get what you mean. Yeah. That needle. Like, yeah. I hear you. I do.
I know that not every fight has it, but just up until now, like we've been deprived of good fights. I need to know that when I'm watching a fight, it's a genuine, like, yo, you two are going in and you're doing the business. None of this fancy rah business. And then you just watch the fight and just think to yourself, these guys didn't really want to pull it in.
Yeah.
But just to kind of round it up, in terms of your predictions between Crawford and Porter, who are you going to have on the fight? Who do you see winning?
Ultimately, I see Bud pulling it out of the bag, man. I think he has too many tools in his toolbox, too many things in his repertoire, for Shawn Porter to handle, man. I can't. I think it's going to be a very keenly contested fight. I do think it's going to go the distance, but I feel like it's going to be one of those instances similar to the fight against Errol Spence, where the cream rises to the top.
Okay.
Even if it is just in the latter rounds, like in Errol Spence's case, it was in the 11th and the 12th round, the championship rounds. That's where he created that separation. I feel like it's just going to be maybe that as well for Terence Crawford. It's going to be keenly contested, back and forth, but I think he'll do just enough to edge it, basically, for me.
I think I think Crawford is gonna do a stoppage.
Wow.
I have a
Okay.
feeling. Do you
Okay.
know why I'm feeling that? I just feel like it being the last chance. I just think that Porter's gonna give it his all, and then like come like 10th, let's say about 10th, 11th at the latest. Not to say he would gas out, but I think he would have given his all, and I just think like it's maybe one too many fights for him now at this stage. Maybe because I'm looking at it like now, his ventures outside of boxing and what he's getting into and stuff like that. Maybe slightly his eyes are now away from that and he's looking more into. This is obviously just me, just kind of thinking, but I just feel like I can see that Crawford will be more the hungrier to get things done. But
Yeah, I hear you.
you know, it's just a prediction, but I just think that it could be a stoppage, maybe 10, 11th. But hey, this is the view.
First person to ever stop.
Yeah,
Porter, bro.
I'm going for that. I am going for that. But I could be mistaken. I could be wrong with my prediction. But I have a feeling that could be the case, man. That could be the case. But just a reminder of you. So that's going to be on the 20th.
The 20th, man.
So obviously, guys, you need to obviously stay up late. It's going to be in the States. So get your coffees or your Red Bulls or whatever you drink to get yourselves ready for that fight. But that's going to be a big, massive fight. And like I said, man, these sort of situations, these sort of fights, I can't just be chatting about it on my own. I got to chop it up with my boy Budge. So we're definitely going to touch on the review of the fight and see whether our predictions are right. I've obviously gone for a stoppage. I've gone for a stoppage 10-11. And Budge has gone for a what would you say? Points by Crawford. Obviously going a whole full 12 rounds. So we'll get to see what's going to happen. An excitable fight. But once again, man, thank you very much, Budge, for jumping on.
Always
I appreciate you each and every time, man, because whenever I chat boxing with you, it's just you can just feel the passion.
I'm just too gassed, bro.
Too gassed about it. And I'm glad that we did a preview because so many times we're missing out on the previews. But you can see how excited we are when we do the reviews and the recap. So we've got that coming up next. For guys obviously watching, please go over to Budge's socials. As he told you, at Talk2, the number 2 Budge. Go and check out his Instagram, Twitter. All the links will be in the description. Please go and like and subscribe. As we always say, man, without you guys, we can't make this happen. So we'll be talking till the cows come home, but without you guys, we need you. We're humble enough to say that we need you guys. So blessed, man. Appreciate you, Budge. And until the next time, we've still got more fights, man. Don't forget, man. There's still fights to come up, so we'll definitely touch on them. What's actually the next excitable fight that's coming up? The next one after Crawford is,
I think. Do you know what? So I feel like the next one is like a combination of 2 fights because of what could potentially happen after those fights, right? So you've got in a lightweight division, you've got Teofimo Lopez, who's got 3 of the major belts, right? And he's fighting against his mandatory George Kambosos for the IBF. And then a week later, you've got Devin Haney, who's got the WBC belt, fighting against Jojo Diaz, right? So if both of those guys come through, they've already been talking. There's been so much back and forth. There's been so much spoken between the 2 of them about them potentially unifying and becoming undisputed. So if they both come through their fights, then they might have an undisputed fight early next year. So that's why that is so exciting. You want both of those 2 to come through.
That's the need.
Have a massive.
That's the needles that I like. That's the needles that I like. You know, it's the excitement of the build-up, man. But we'll definitely touch on that, man. 100% do the previews and then obviously recap and do the reviews on those fights, especially those 2 fights that are pretty much back-to-back and what they mean in terms of the grand scheme of the boxing calendar, especially going into next year. So definitely touch on that, man. Budge, appreciate you once and
always a pleasure, my guy.
Once again, appreciate you. And until the next time here on the Dash of Sports, peace. Thank you so much for watching another episode of A Dash of Sports. That's episode 55. I truly appreciate your love and support, especially if you made it this far into the show. And if you need further information about future episodes or just your day-to-day sporting updates, then hey, come and check me out, man. I'm on Instagram and I'm also on Twitter, which is @Sports. I'll put it down below here @Sports, and I'll also leave my link in the description area along with Talk to Budge so that you can go and check us out directly. And please don't forget to press the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any future shows. And until the next time here on @Sports, peace.